We are all taught from a young age that a free press is the ultimate check on power. Journalists are supposed to act as watchdogs, constantly investigating the state and holding powerful elites accountable. But look at what happens when a state suppresses mass protests, or when a massive corporate corruption scandal breaks. Public exposure rarely triggers a shift in how these institutions actually function. These crises follow a set pattern. There's a surge of aggressive coverage, the public gets furious, high-level officials resign in disgrace, and then the news cycle moves on, leaving the architecture that allowed the abuse to happen exactly as it was. We typically call this a failure of journalism, but when a pattern repeats this consistently, we have to ask if absorbing public shock to protect the system is the media's intended function. Assuming the media and the state are natural enemies prevents us from understanding how modern power operates. In the early 20th century, the philosopher Antonio Gramsci observed that a ruling class cannot maintain its dominance purely through physical force. They require the ongoing, manufactured consent of the public. Gramsci's hegemonic apparatus shows a ruling class projecting power through two pillars. One is coercive force, laws, prisons, and police. The other is intellectual control, schools, culture, and media. This intellectual pillar builds the consensus, validating state force. Decades later, researchers Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky detailed the economic mechanics behind this relationship in their propaganda model. Commercial news is a profit-driven enterprise. Producing daily content is expensive, so media outlets require a steady, cheap stream of information. Government press briefings, political insiders, and police PR fill that gap by acting as subsidized sources. This creates a structural barrier to accountability. When a news organization's daily operation heavily relies on the very entities it claims to investigate for its raw materials, it faces an inherent conflict of interest when those institutions are challenged. When undeniable violence by the state or an elite figure breaks through into the public eye, the media narrative shifts toward a specific focus. Following a police shooting, major outlets frequently publish official police narratives verbatim. The violence is framed as the action of a single bad actor, separating the officer's conduct from the broader system of state-sanctioned violence. The files of convicted trafficker Jeffrey Epstein contained documented evidence of a decades-long exploitation ring spanning global financial and political institutions, targeting young women from backgrounds with no institutional power or media access. Yet the ensuing coverage fixated on specific names on Flightbox. A story about vast institutional failure was converted into celebrity gossip centered around Prince Andrew. This editorial choice completely buries the stories of the victims, who often lacked the economic resources to challenge their abusers. By focusing on individual reputations, the media protects the banks, legal systems, and institutions that facilitated the abuse. The hegemonic system ensures its own survival by willingly sacrificing a few high-profile individuals. Their downfall absorbs the public's anger, allowing the network itself to persist. Beyond how stories are framed, the actual pacing of the daily news cycle acts as a secondary protective layer for state power. The format relies on a rapid-fire flow of decontextualized events, creating an eternal present. This speed actively strips away historical connections, erasing things like colonial legacies or the long-term fallout of economic deregulation. This media amnesia makes current wealth disparities and power dynamics appear to be natural facts of life, obscuring the specific policies and historical choices that constructed them. Keeping the public historically blind is a structural necessity. If citizens cannot remember the past, they cannot connect the dots of systemic corruption in the present. The media functions as an institutional shock absorber. It processes exposure and manages outrage without permitting a challenge to the system's core stability. Constitutional press freedom guarantees very little if the institutions delivering the news are economically and structurally embedded in the exact power they claim to hold accountable. True media literacy requires us to stop getting swept up in episodic, individualized outrage. We have to start demanding historical context for every crisis we see on screen. Achieving real accountability means we have to stop focusing purely on the bad apples and finally start questioning the nature of the tree. If you value evidence over tribalism, subscribe to Hard-Hitting News 365. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.